Hello, everybody. So it's a sleepy week for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin conference didn't really have any groundbreaking announcement. It's a sleepy week, and Bitcoin is not doing too much. And when those weeks happen, typically it's a good time to load. It's a good time to buy and to hone the portfolio and to work in the portfolio. At least that's my view. The market has shifted its attention today to this. The Federal Trade Court. Federal Trade Court strikes down the tariffs. And of course, a lot of stocks are up right now in the tariff space. This is a stock that I own, Elf Beauty. It's up, in my view, mostly on the fact that the tariffs have been struck down. I fully expect the stock to be back down if Trump finds a way to make sure the tariffs actually go on through one way or another, as Goldman Sachs seems to suggest. Anyways, the market attention is going after the tariff. The tariffs, in my view, are largely a distraction. You see that's what's left of the tariff are just already, nothing compared to what they were feared to be on April 2nd, right, the Liberation Day. I don't think it's going to do much. It's very tough to change things, very tough to change anything in government or in the US. And so I'm not worried about it at all, but the market's going to trade on tariffs. And maybe for like a few days, we're going to just talk about tariffs. And in that time, Bitcoin is going to keep sleeping. Bitcoin is going to keep being sleepy. And what I've noticed on Bitcoin, you may remember me in March, February. I was calling Bitcoin a stable coin. I was like, okay, it was stuck around 95,000 plus or minus 3,000. It was stuck in that range for the longest time, and I think this asset, is known to stay in a range, maybe for 2 weeks, maybe for a month. We seem to be in that range around 108 plus or minus 1,500 is the range right now, and so it's a kind of a boring phase, but it's really, frankly, the best phase to work in the portfolio, in my view, because over the long run, I have no doubt that this asset is going up. I'm more bullish than ever. No financial advice, of course. Another reason why actually the price of Bitcoin might be down right now is money managers, exchanges like the Binances of the world. They're trying to liquidate this guy, which is James Wynn, who was complaining that today a decent yacht is more than $80 million or something like that. It's a joke. I'm joking, but he's essentially insane with a 40x trade. And they're trying really, really hard to liquidate him, and so that's why the price of Bitcoin might actually be manipulated right now, and it might be staying in that range as long as they haven't successfully liquidated James Wynn. So that could be another reason, but over the long run, in my view, there is little doubt that Bitcoin has only one way to go, and it's up. And that's the long-term story, of course, is the long-term story of the money printer. I believe the Fed is now officially in a stealth QE period. They just need to talk about it, but they're in a stealth QE period. If you look at the 30-year rate, the 30-year rate is it is at all-time high. That's like, it reached right a bit before 2024, like late 2023. It was an all-time high. It's at all-time high. Right. That's what it is. I'm not pointing out to the right thing here. It should be around a 5. So it's slightly under 5 right now. But anyways, it's at all-time high, and that's with the drop of interest rates. So the market's not buying it. Nobody wants to buy the government bonds. People are interested in other assets and assets without counterparty risk, and this is going to be good for Bitcoin. Why? Because you find out that the Congress can't do anything. Right. That's why Elon Musk officially sent his goodbye tweet saying, I'm going back to Tesla. Now the only way to save the US is to grow GDP 10x. So I'm going to focus on growing GDP 10x because it looks like a lot of the cuts that he was hoping to implement are not going to be done because of Congress and because of judges. And this goes on, and the US is just a very stable place that can't change. You can't change it in a bad way. You can't change it in a good way. It's a very stable place. The dollar is just going to inflate until infinity, and it's fairly predictable. And you can look at that line, and it's fairly predictable. And Zero Hedge here has a very funny thing, because they're gonna have to reimburse according to the tariff judge strike down. They're gonna have to reimburse something like I don't know. I think it's like $20 billion in total of money that was collected in tariff that's gonna have to be repaid, and it's gonna be quite interesting if the U.S. now has to repay the tariffs that have been collected, and then of course maybe they find another way to keep them on, and we go on through this uncertainty, and the tariff has moved on to something else, and it's moved on to pumping the stocks that are making stuff in China, and then dropping the stocks that are making stuff in China. Meanwhile, Bitcoin, in my view, is going up. It's just that it's going to take a little while. So let's talk about strategy. As you know, strategy is my largest position. If you own strategy, don't miss this interview. The Michael Saylor Q&A, lots of interesting things here, lots of things we already knew, as eloquent as ever, Saylor, but a few things that I've said before, and I'm happy to actually hear Saylor articulate that. But saying, if the market is dumb enough to make a MicroStrategy stock trade below price to NAV, well, it's very simple. You can just do a buyback. And I've said that for a long time. You could do a buyback, you just issue a regular bond, and you do a buyback. Apple's been doing that, right? It's like a very common thing. In the case of Saylor, since he's ramping up the preferred, what you can do is simply issue the preferred, and just buy back the stock. And you buy the stock, of course, you would buy it back if the stock ever traded at a discount. So when people talk about GBTC and say GBTC almost traded at like 50% discount over the Bitcoin on balance sheet, GBTC couldn't buy itself back, right? It was a closed-end fund. It was a fund. An operating company can do a buyback. And so if MicroStrategy was to ever trade below a 1 in a price to NAV, below a 1, well, they would just do a buyback via funds that you get through the preferred, through issuing the preferred, which don't dilute the common stock, right? Issuing preferreds don't dilute the common stock, so you would do a preferred ATM, or you could do a regular bond, or you could just borrow against your Bitcoin like he has done before, right? A lot of, but he doesn't have it anymore, right? He's not borrowing about the Bitcoin anymore, but a lot of a new cycle still thinks that MicroStrategy is this highly leveraged play, but it's not. It's less than 10% of market cap in terms of debt, and even then, much of that debt is going to convert, so it's really not debt, it's future dilution to current market cap is really the better way, I think, to look at it. So he's literally creating a scenario where he can accumulate Bitcoin in any circumstance of price to NAV, and so to me that's a floor. To me that gives me a lot of peace of mind to know that there's this floor. And we also saw that the same at Mara. As soon as Mara hit a market cap to NAV of a 1, it bounced right back. And as much hate as Mara gets. And I'm not saying some of that hate is not unwarranted. I'm sure some of it is grounded. But as much disliking as Mara gets, Mara bounced back. As soon as it hit a price to NAV of 1, it bounced back. And I think that's what would happen to Michael Saylor. As you know, I think international debt instruments are next. I think that's going to be the next announcement. But who knows when that's going to happen? I have no idea. Anyways, KULR. KULR is my next meta planet. I want to talk about KULR. So you know my meta planet story. I found it. I published a few videos about it. I was all excited. It was trading at a 4 market cap to NAV, and then traders started taking the stock down to the stratosphere, to the point that, to me right now, meta planet, it's a long-term hold, but I'm not adding because anyways, I'm not adding. I think it's like a 7 or 8 price to NAV right now on MetaPlanet. So it's gone into the stratosphere. So I'm looking for the next stock that could do that, because I am sensitive to the idea that a smaller Bitcoin treasury company can grow faster than a larger Bitcoin treasury company. This is the same as small caps versus big caps in regular stocks. A regular small cap will grow faster than a big cap. Now the big difference, of course, is the risk that you're willing to take, right? With an established company, you have less risk. With a newer company, you have more risk. And so here, this is where KULR comes in. So KULR to me is very interesting, interesting. I think this one's KULR or something. KULR. I don't know if it's KULR. Anyways, KULR. What's interesting to me is that they have an actual business, like they have a real business, which strategy also has a real business, but the real business of strategy is now it's like 1/100th, right? It's 1%. The real business of strategy is 1%, right? The consulting business, the business intelligence division of strategy is now less than 1% of the company of MSTR, right? For KULR, it's not the case. For KULR, much of the valuation, in my view, is due to this company having an underlying business that is growing at 100%. Right, it's still EBITDA negative, but that depends on how you count it, right? If a lot of accounting standards look at R&D as like a loss. Do you really look R&D as a loss? When I covered this video the last time, I was comparing companies in the high performance space battery space, companies that don't have Bitcoin, and they trade at very similar valuations. The truth is, making a battery that you can put in satellites, that you can put in space, that you can send on Mars, making a battery that can withstand negative 60 degrees Celsius, and that is also very light, so that it can be sent into space, and that also doesn't explode, so that it can be sent into space. Doing this, I mean, the business is cooler, lighter, and safer batteries. That's the business. This is the business of space batteries. It's a tough business, and that's half the business. You ever have a business which is not growing very fast, but if you ever have a business, KULR is the NASA services business, where they rate and grade batteries that are going in NASA space equipment, and so that's an actual real business. And the CEO noted that they're on track to grow that business 100% in 2025. So I have that revenue growth that I love. So this is a stock which, could almost enter in my spreadsheet, and that I would almost be interested to buy, even if they didn't have Bitcoin. So Bitcoin at this point is the bonus. At this point, I don't consider this price to NAV really a fair one, because that price to NAV only thinks that the business is valued on Bitcoin and on its ability to raise more Bitcoin, which, by the way, it can totally warrant that. But to me, that price to NAV has to do with the fact that they have an actual underlying business with very little competition. And that's to me, that creates a very interesting situation where in that case, the ATM, which they've just announced, May 27, so 2 days ago. This made me very bullish when I saw this. 2 days ago, or anyways, the SEC really need to work on their user interface. But if you go on the SEC, you see 2 days ago, shelf registration, $300 million shelf registration. Keep in mind, this business market cap right now is $360 million. So they're going to be able to do an ATM. They're going to be able to issue another $300 million worth of shares at a price to NAV of 4. So think about how much more Bitcoin they're going to be able to buy with that price to NAV. Because, and by the way, they always talk about how when you do an ATM, everything is for the business, for the general operation of a business. But what's very important when you read the prospectus about the use of proceeds, very, very clear, as well as the acquisition of Bitcoin. And I would venture out to say that most of those proceeds are probably going to go towards the acquisition of Bitcoin. And so if you do that, you have a company that right now has $86 million worth of Bitcoin, only 800 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, $86 million worth of Bitcoin, and they could potentially ATM 300 million and turn that into Bitcoin. So that means that the Bitcoin yield going forward, one year out, I mean, you could have a 400% Bitcoin yield going forward with that ATM alone. So I like it very much. And what I like about KULR more than, say, Assembler is that they have good options. The company is established, has been along for a long time. They have 2027 options that are trading. Leaps, 2027 leaps. So I like this stock very much. The last thing I like, of course, is this news that we're entering the Russell 3000. And oftentimes there is a ramp up and there's an accumulation of shares before entering the Russell 3000. So that's another catalyst. It's a small cap, But I like it very much, and I like that it's in the space business, and it's entering the humanoid business now with a German product that they're a German like heavy lifting product that they're introducing to the US that could have military applications in nursing and health. Anyways, the point here is, I see a lot of things that I like in this business. So that's one that I am accumulating right now, as you know, if you're on the Patreon. And the last two that I look at, and you know that on this channel, I'm not big on ETFs. I typically dislike ETFs. I'm not a big ETF guy, as you know. But they have advantages in this period of sleepiness of Bitcoin, and they also have advantages in maintaining your margin, or making sure that you have a lot of dry powder if we get another crash. I'm very wary of that, right? I want to have at all times a lot of buying power on the margin available, should an opportunity arise on stock X or YZ. So and of course you can't do that with KULR, because KULR has 100% margin, and you can't do that with Strategy, because Strategy has 70% margin. That's on Robinhood. It depends on what you use. On many brokers, Strategy is still at 100% on margin on many brokers. But in periods of turmoil, they raise the margin way up, and they may increase the maintenance ratio if there's turmoil on OWNB, but I don't think they would on BMAX, and BMAX, because BMAX is debt. So what do I like about these? So OWNB, of course, it's the top holding is Microstrategy, followed by Metaplanet, followed by Mara. Like OWNB very much, maintenance ratio is 30%, and it's a way to own all of the Bitcoin companies that own more than 1,000 Bitcoins, which, by the way, in my view, if OWNB ever becomes big, KULR could also benefit from OWNB, because they would be candidates to be included on OWNB. So I like it quite a bit. And another one that I like, of course, is BMAX. We can't access the convertible debt. The convertible debt has had really, really good performance with lower volatility. We can't buy it. I think the convertible debt of Michael Saylor, the Strategy convertible debt, I think is going to be a very rare product. I don't think we're going to see as much of that product in the future, as evidenced by the fact that he hasn't done one yet. I know not everybody agrees with me on that, but I think BMAX is just too good. Convertible debt is just too good. Saylor has said that himself on the call at the end of the last conference call of Strategy. Saylor said that investors may want to consider BMAX. I think he's just going to do the prefers going forward. So I'm not sure he's ever going to do BMAX. So in a nutshell, I like those odds, and I like the performance of BMAX. And the maintenance ratio on this is 25%. And this ETF of BMAX is 70. I added it up. It's 77% Strategy corporate convertible bonds. Strategy bonds are 77%, and the other bonds are a small one from Riot and a few from Mara, which Mara followed the strategy of Bitcoin. Mara was able to issue convertible bond to buy Bitcoin, which in my view was a genius move that they followed, and that's why they're the second largest holder of Bitcoin. So I like these odds a lot, and that's what I'm doing in this sleepy time for Bitcoin. I enjoy this mini winter in the middle of the week. So that's kind of like a cool breeze, like a cool wind on Bitcoin. So anyways, this was not investment advice. This was not financial advice. This is only entertainment, just entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.